Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this The Clown Decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. And today we are talking about the big news of the day that had one of the lamest leads up I think I've ever seen when it comes to a major party's leadership election. The fact that, yes, Kemi Badenoch has been elected leader of the Conservative Party. And my perspective on this is that it's fine. I'm not particularly excited, but I don't think it's a total disaster, like some other people on the online right seem to think this is. I did prefer Jenrick. I did like the fact that Jenrick was going hard with his rhetoric to try and push things right. But the fact of the matter is that people that wanted that type of thing in the Tory party had already moved over to Reform, which is where it kind of snagged on Jenrick. So what this has really done has really allowed for, at least in terms of rhetoric, a Tory party that is quite centre-right on its rhetoric, and a Reform Party that is going quite hard on the more right-wing rhetoric, which I think is perfectly fine. I think that is a healthy political landscape as far as I care. In terms of what Kemi Badenoch would actually do if she won a general election and became Prime Minister, I think she'd largely do what she did while she was in Cabinet, but we'll get onto that a little bit later. But first, it's details time. So, the Tory leadership results in full. Kemi Badenoch managed to get 53,806 votes, while Robert Jenrick managed to get 41,318 votes, with a turnout of 72.8%. And so there was a fairly large margin for Kemi Badenoch to win this election, and as I say, I would put this largely down to the fact that many of the members who quite like Robert Jenrick have already moved to Reform. I am literally one of those people. I know many other people that are like that. And I think that's perfectly fine, because this has literally just told the Tories, okay, it's too late. You are now firmly the party of the centre, I guess you can say. You have been trying to win elections on the centre-left for quite some time, apart from when Boris Johnson got in, who managed to do it because of Brexit. And now you've got Kemi Badenoch, who, at least from an awful lot of normies that I have been talking to, you got to bear in mind they are not political junkies like a lot of fans of this channel. Those types of people only see what she says in the newspaper when she hits headlines, when she hits daily news roundups on the BBC. And the way they put it is that she is quite good at putting forward controversial subjects and putting it forward in quite a normie-friendly way. The example I get given a lot is her point about not all cultures are equal and there are some inferior ones. And a lot of people find the way she approaches that rhetoric quite approachable. This is a very good thing, by the way, if you didn't notice. Because she effectively is making it acceptable for people to say, you know what, I don't particularly like certain groups of people, you don't need to name it, who are part of a culture, again, you don't need to name it, who say, we'll never let women answer the door, and it always has to be to talk to the woman, you have to go through the man, you can't handshake, etc, etc. We know what culture this is. Oh, it's okay to say it's inferior. You can't name it, we're not quite there yet, but if you can't see this shift in the Overton window being a good thing, I don't know what's going to help you. And this is why I made the video the other day, where I said, I don't think it really matters who wins out of Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick. I would prefer Jenrick personally, but either way, you're going to see wins in recapturing language and things like that, which is something that even Dr. David Starkey keeps saying we need to do. And like it or not, Kemi being black really does help with that, because accusations of her being racist simply do not stick. I know we think it's cringe, I know we'd rather not have to worry about that whatsoever. However, we live in this timeline, so play by the rules. Otherwise you just get laughed into irrelevancy. I've seen it too many times. And that's best case scenario, by the way. People go further, they risk jail time. Just, why would you shoot yourself in the foot like that? Anyway, Kemi Badenoch made a tweet not long after it was revealed she won, where she said, "It is an honour and a privilege to have been elected to lead our great Conservative Party, a party that I love, that has given me so much. I'd also like to pay tribute to Robert Jenrick, who fought a great campaign. I have no doubt he will have a key role to play in our party for many years to come. Thank you to all the members who have put their faith in me. It's time to get down to business. It's time to renew." Perfectly fine, and as I say, never discount the Tories, even under Kemi Badenoch, who is not my ideal candidate. But you can't deny she's going in the right direction from Sunak. She is certainly to the right of Sunak, certainly to the right of Boris Johnson, certainly to the right of Theresa May. I mean, everyone's the right to Theresa May, to be fair. And so that's absolutely fine as far as I can tell. Them going centre-left to the centre, it's in the right direction. It's just obvious that Robert Jenrick is too fast for some people. And those that wanted to accelerate, me, went over to reform. This is the political landscape readjusting, and it's going to be readjusting for the next 5 years or so, because this Labour government is just pure chaos. Robert Jenrick also made a congratulatory tweet to Kemi Badenoch. Congratulations to Kemi Badenoch. Thank you to everyone who supported my vision for a Conservative Party rooted in the common ground of British politics. It is now time for the Conservatives to unite behind Kemi and take the fight to this disastrous Labour government. Very gracious in defeat, doesn't seem bitter at all, seems perfectly happy to work with Kemi Badenoch, which as a Tory party it makes sense why they would want to do that. And okay, it's not going as far to the right as Mr. Jenrick would like it to, but as I say, he knows it's going in that direction, which is likely why he will be staying. And I do feel quite bad for him, because I think Robert Jenrick really pushed through with his campaign. I thought he was doing all the work he could. It's just a bit of a shame that to most people, Kemi Badenoch did have, to them, a better track record when it came to her, especially previous rhetoric. Again, it's quite hard to keep up with all the details, but again, we'll go through that of what Kemi Badenoch has actually done with her time as a minister. And you got to bear in mind that even with politically engaged people, who will be the type of people who are Tory members, Labour members, whatever, even to them a lot of politics is vibes-based. And Kemi simply had the better vibes. And yes, her being a black woman who was effectively anti-woke was absolutely massive to the boomers in the Tory party. And again, I think that's absolutely fine. I am fine with anyone being anti-woke being in charge of a party. I'm fine with Farage, I'm fine with Kemi. I would have preferred Jenrick. Doesn't matter, we work with what we've got. And in the announcements of the results, it was quite obvious that Kemi Badenoch being black was obviously at the forefront of some people's minds.
And isn't it great that we're the first party to have a black leader of the party? Another glass ceiling shattered. But I welcome Kemi to the stage.
Now, I know a lot of online righties are all saying, oh, this is the Tories showing that they're woke, they're left-wing. You got to bear in mind what this actually is, as politics has been an awful lot, especially for the past few years. This is just a dunk on Labour. That is all this is supposed to be. This has happened every time we've had a new female Prime Minister. This even happened with Liz Truss. They were saying, hey, we got our third woman Prime Minister, our third woman leader. Labour couldn't do it once. That is all they are trying to say here. This is all they care about. They don't care about that she's black, genuinely. They just care that they have another reason to dunk on Labour. That is why they're excited for this, and this is probably why they voted for it. Again, let's not pretend that the online right was not saying maybe we should get Kemi Badenoch in because, one, she's a bit based, and two, she's black. We were saying this 5 years ago. Like, we were all saying this because it's funny to dunk on Labour. Now, quite a few people have moved past that, and that's fine. But let's not pretend we already didn't know that the normies were about 5 years behind us, and this is now just them catching up to what the online right was saying 5 years ago. This is fine. The Tories are moving right. It's okay. You know? Anyway, this wasn't even the funniest clip that I saw of the announcement. This was Robert Jenrick's wife reaction when they heard the results of the leadership contest. Yeah, she is a little bit disgruntled at the fact that her husband did not win. But yeah, sometimes we let our emotions let slip and we forget we're on camera. But I just thought that was quite funny. Anyway, here is what Kemi Badenoch had to say upon arriving at CCHQ as the new Tory leader.
This has not been the easiest campaign for all of us. It took a lot of guts and a lot of courage for us to stick to the fact that we needed to renew before we started having a new manifesto for the next election.
So this was also the issue I had with Kemi Badenoch rather than Robert Jenrick. Robert Jenrick was throwing out policies that he had an idea for when he became Prime Minister, because more than likely he would have been Prime Minister at the next election, given that Tories were leaderless for like 4 months and now they're above Labour in the polls. But Kemi Badenoch's idea was, let's go into opposition with me as leader and then we'll kind of work out what our policies will be as we go on, and I didn't particularly like that. I don't like the fact that she wasn't really throwing out policy ideas. She had some, to be fair, but they were not as bold and what I would say are as needed as what Robert Jenrick was throwing out, like leaving the ECHR, dealing with immigration, cutting taxing and cutting spending, good stuff like that. Stuff that, frankly, he was copy and pasting from the Reform contract. Because I am a full-on Reform activist at this point, so of course I like that. And also, Robert Jenrick was a bit more open to the people that left the Tories to join Reform, and Kemi Badenoch is not as open as that. Which is the thing. I've been saying it for quite a while, and I think as the election comes up over the next few years, Kemi will weaken on this point, that there probably is going to need to be a Reform Tory pact, because there is a issue that Kemi's rhetoric might not work as well over the next 5 years, because people might work out she's not as useful as the rhetoric lets on. But again, we'll go into that at the end. Let's finish the speech first.
But that means that there is all to play for. It means that we can start afresh. It means that all of us can have a stake in the party.
It then cuts to her thanking everyone. But yes, she was certainly trying to be the broad church candidate. This is probably why she ended up winning. Which, I'm not being funny, that is exactly how Tories end up winning elections. The problem is that the core voters, the ones that have mostly moved to Reform, don't trust the Tories anymore. But the problem is that you really need to keep giving them red meat and giving them what they want, like Thatcher did an awful lot to make the party as powerful as it was. And this brings me on to my next point, because the Worcester Club ran some numbers, and they made the point that the number of people who cast their ballots over the years was this year 95,000. Last time for Truss it was 142,000. Sunak never actually won her leadership contest. Johnson won 139,000. Cameron won nearly 200,000. And Ian Duncan-Smith in 2001 won 250,000. And the Worcester Club make the point that this is a party in decline, but I did some quick numbers with the specific Politics UK numbers before and worked out that actually the Tory members, based on that estimate, have about 130,000 members. Now, I want you to bear in mind that Reform currently have 90,000 members. That means that they're only 40,000 members behind, and I'm not being funny, as time goes on, and I reckon as people start realising that Kemi is, as I say, just good at talking, you might see people still leaving the Tories to go move over to Reform. Meaning that in the end, Reform might end up with more members than the Tories, technically making it bigger. And this is kind of my hope for now. My hope used to be, if Jenrick wins, then at least you'll have a Reform Conservative pact in the next election. You'll probably see a decent coalition government that we have seen in the past. They might even end up merging into the Refcon party, something like that. But with Kemi, I'm seeing that as less and less likely. And although they're leading in the polls at the moment, people just do not trust, especially in Reform. And it's because she typically will be saying one thing while doing another while in Parliament. But again, details on that later. Firstly, I want to go through what Labour had to say about this announcement. So Labour released a couple of tweets, and they have to be the worst way to react to this news. So, would Kemi Badenoch take money back out of state education to give to private schools? The Labour government has put more money into state schools across the country whilst ending tax breaks for private schools. Would Kemi take money back out of the state education to give to the private schools? Headline: Kemi Badenoch says her first act as Prime Minister would be to restore tax breaks for private schools. Which I think is one of the stupidest things they could have done. People do not like the VAT on private schools. Everyone is seeing the headlines that Eton basically look like they wanted this because they can actually make a profit off it, because of the money they can get back from HMRC for their capital projects. People are seeing that service members can't send their kids to private boarding schools because it's all of a sudden too expensive with the VAT. They don't particularly like that. They can see that it's pulled the rug out from, okay, under 7% of students, pupils, whatever, but people also realise that you send someone to school, a private school, and you pay for the fees, you've taken them out of the state school. People realise that actually, yeah, if you have the money, why shouldn't you put them in private education? Oh, it's also caused an issue with special needs kids. All of a sudden they need to write to council saying, look, we need your help with this. We can't go to private school anymore. It's too expensive. So now we need your resources to help our child have a decent education, and they can't do it. It's been a disaster, and everyone's seen it, and Labour are in this bubble somehow, thinking, yeah, this was one of our best policies, Kemi Badenoch doesn't want it, ha 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 ha. Completely shot themselves in the foot. It's no wonder Tories were winning before Kemi Badenoch's win was even announced. I can't wait for the polls next week. The second one I'm going to go through is, would Kemi Badenoch take investment from our NHS? Our NHS. I'm not being funny, but NHS reform seems to be a more and more popular position these days. The Labour government, for some reason they've misspelled that put two N's on. You could have at least spell checked the third word of your tweet. Has announced record investment in our NHS to cut waiting lists. Would Kemi Badenoch take investment away from the NHS? From our NHS, sorry? Badenoch suggests Britons may change minds on free access to healthcare. I'm not being funny. I know loads of people that want less free access to healthcare because they go to A&E. They can't get to see their GPs. They're in constant waiting lists. Why? Because whenever you go there, you notice that it's people whose elbow feels funny that they're going to A&E for. It's people who are trying to blag a sick note going to GPs. People understand this. All of a sudden you charge a fiver, people think, maybe not worth it. Labour, as far as I'm concerned, are just completely deluded. And as I say, Kemi Badenoch is way to the right of them. You know, she's still centre, but Labour are way far to the left than I thought they were. So I'm perfectly happy with her. I'd be perfectly happy with her Tory party being in charge rather than Labour's. Like, anyone with a brain knows this. But as I say, she was not my favourite to win the leadership race. It was Robert Jenrick. And it's finally time to get into the details of why. And thankfully, this coincides with a really good Reform UK piece of propaganda to show you what I've been alluding to throughout this video, that Kemi will happily say one thing but do another. And in the tweet they say, who is the real Kemi Badenoch? Find out for yourself. Well, let's take a look.
Explaining where, for instance, we've gone wrong with immigration, that the duty of a government is to its citizens. So the concept of a nation state and sovereignty is very important to me.
I'd like to thank the Home Secretary for removing the annual limits on work visas and also on international students, both of which I lobbied for.
The moment in a bid to promote trade between the US and the UK.
Yeah, Reform have already put it pretty well. On immigration, yeah, we've got too much of it, we need to know where we went wrong. And then they just have a video of her in Parliament saying, oh yeah, I lobbied for looser immigration rules and I'm very thankful that I got them through. I mean, okay, it was on behalf of a better trade agreement between the US and UK. I would have left that bit out if I was Reform, but it is exactly the type of attack that Reform should be pressing onto Kemi Badenoch. I have no idea what they had planned for if Jenrick was put in, because he doesn't quite have this long list of gaffes from his time as a junior minister, or as a minister full stop, that they could just pick out and say, yeah, she says she wants less immigration, but actually she lobbied for more. Jenrick doesn't really have that. Jenrick is a lot more authentic with his principles here, hence I preferred him. But as I say, this is for the political junkie. This stuff's really good for getting votes, it absolutely is. But again, what are they saying? It's like, oh, the point of this is, we're really the party that is going to bring down immigration. You vote Tories are not going to do it, but still, the rhetoric on its own is good enough as far as I care. I don't want the Tories in again, particularly, unless they're willing to have a coalition with Reform. So as far as I'm concerned, it's still probably a net positive to move things to the right. It's just not as good as if Jenrick was in charge. Which in the clown decade, you've got to take every win you can get.
The atmosphere is actually very positive. So I think that we're actually in a really good place.
How would you rate our chances of a trade deal with the US?
The US is not carrying out any free trade agreements with any country, so I would say very low.
I see where I went wrong before. So bringing up the US-UK trade deal was to do with this point, where Kemi on TV would happily say, things are looking really good for a trade deal, we're probably going to get one, and then in an interview the next day, I assume, or not too long after, when she's directly asked the question, how's it going to actually get this trade deal, she says, well, pretty badly, because the US don't want to trade with anyone. Point being from Reform is that she just lies, which I think I need to point out that Reform's thing at the moment, one of their main points of being a party is to put trust back in politics, and their point here is that, yeah, Kemi isn't trustworthy. which I'm fine with. Fine, point out her flaws in this way. She's still moving things right, great. But really, if you want to move it properly right, vote Reform. That is the route that Reform is going down. That is what I'm saying in this video. So overall, things aren't going to go too badly.
The reason why I don't like identity politics is because it forces people to look at themselves as tribes.
Lefty white male celebrity is so blinded by ideology he can't see the optics of attacking the only black woman in government. And this is where she lost me, because then of course she engaged in identity politics.
Yeah, I mean that is just true. I think it's kind of fine for her to engage in identity politics like this, because it is undermining identity politics itself in doing that, but I understand why people wouldn't like her doing that. And again, it's fine to point out that she's a liar, it's fine to point out her hypocrisy. That's what Reform should be going for, and they're doing it pretty well, I think.
Is not an integrity issue. Being honest is, and I'm honest.
I've worked with Kemi because she can be very rude, particularly if she doesn't think you're important.
That's probably the weakest attack. You can be rude and honest. I guess they just wanted another example. That wasn't the best one to pull out, but to be fair, they definitely put the best first and then the worst last, so whatever. This is all pretty fast-paced. I don't think people are really going to notice. Unless, obviously, they watch this video. Anyway, the rest of this video is just going through a few choice quotes, effectively saying Kemi Badenoch's either useless, she should stop being woke, which, as I say, she does ride on the fact she's black, but again, these people are 5 years behind us. We were fine 5 years ago saying have a black leader to use her as or him, whatever, as a shield against identity politics. But as Reform say here, yeah, new leader, but it's the same lies, hypocrisy, and politics, so you may as well just vote Reform because we have more integrity. And I think that's fair. Kemi Badenoch's biggest issue is definitely her integrity. She isn't honest, at least from the difference between the things she says and does are any to be believed. She's quite renowned for basically not taking work seriously, being late to meetings. I saw about 3 interviews over the course of this election where she just didn't turn up to interviews. She just didn't turn up to them, and it doesn't exactly bode well for people that are expecting a hard-working, honest person with integrity as their leader. But as I say, people really don't particularly look beyond the fact that she says the right things, which, as I say, is fine. That's all I want from the Tories at this point. I'm not expecting them to do a proper shake-up to be anything like Reform. I'm expecting them to move right, sure. Kemi Badenoch was absolutely to the right of the previous Prime Ministers and, of course, of half of the people going to be Tory leader. But you can't have everything. This is the right direction. I don't think she should be the right-wing choice for Prime Minister. I think that should be Nigel Farage. And so I'm going to continue being a Reform activist. I have signed up to be a canvasser. And if you want immigration sorted, if you want the economy and taxation to stop strangling you, if you want a government that is going to care about your interests before interests of foreigners, people coming over in boats or massive multinational corporations, then I'd suggest you vote Reform. And even better for now, join Reform. Become a member. Get involved in your local politics. Because a great way to win British politics is to do really well on the local level. This is how the Lib Dems won 72 seats, this is how Greens won 5. What Reform have done is that they have won these 5 seats by having Nigel Farage at the helm and saying, look, you don't want Labour because they suck, you want an alternative to the Tories, we are the alternative. We are your only chance to have a right-wing government. And it won them 4 million votes. Imagine what happens if they put effort into it and you helped. My only rule for you is please be normal. Because the people on the online right and all over there, you know, the people who are going to come to my channel from there, they're not particularly useful. They're trying to do things in real life and I can appreciate that. But the fact of the matter is that they have such an awful history and they are not able to just be normal online. They're just a false start. You're not going to get anywhere with them. So as far as I can tell, Reform is our only hope for getting anywhere close to a right-wing government. The Tories, sure, they're second best, but they are way behind where they need to be, now that they've voted Kemi Badenoch in as leader. But anyway, with that, I think that's everything I've got for you for today. So, shill time. I'm afraid there's going to be no streams next week, because I am away, which means that videos are going to be few and far between. I'm going to try and get a video ready to get out next week, But I did want to make this video just in case I couldn't do that, so I feel less bad. And so you're only waiting a week before I am definitely back for Laughing at the Guardian, which is returning next Saturday. So you got that to look forward to. Then after that Saturday, Monday we're back to the Antiquity streams on Monday. Tuesday we've got Tosh Talks. Don't know what the topic's going to be yet, but do join Worcester Club to get involved with that vote and nominations. And Dustborn's back whenever Tharium's back. I don't know when that will be exactly. And then I'm being forced to play Life is Strange because I got a £50 super chat and now I'm forced to play another game. So apparently the best way to get me to play a game on stream is to super chat me. So take from that what you will. Anyway, do subscribe, do become a channel member, do give super thanks and super chats. They really do help the channel out. And with that, that's everything I had for you for today. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.